All right, there we go. So welcome again to the Forestry Financial Incentives and Assistance. We're joined here today by Alyssa Gregory from the Maine Forest Service and Sean Horan from Humane Extension as well as NRCS, which is the Natural Resource Conservation Service.
Thanks. We're going to do a lot of acronyms.
Yes, a lot of acronyms. So I'm going to share my screen here and I'm going to pass it over to Alyssa to better introduce herself.
Hi, thanks for joining us tonight. Like Maddie said, I'm Alyssa Gregory, District Forester with Maine Forest Service. Today, I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of our cost share programs and incentives for woodland stewardship. Some of them are going to be applicable for small woodland owners. Others are for mainly municipalities, but I know here in Maine, a lot of us are on our town boards and committees, so I think they'll be relevant. We have one of the projects that I'll talk about today, actually just down the road in Thorndike. So the cross share programs I'm going to talk about today are the Woods Waste program, the invasive plant management program, Project Canopy, and then I'm going to briefly mention direct link loans. That's not a cost share program, but an option for people to get low interest loans for equipment used for forestry activities. That one does have some other stipulations and requires that you're part of other organizations, but I thought I would mention it just if anyone is interested in getting into operations. So the Woods Waste program is the main branding of the USDA Forest Stewardship Program. Every state has a forest stewardship program. We've just called ours Be Woods Wise, and we have this trinity of advice, resources, and incentives that make up the Woods Wise program. So taking care of our woods is extremely important, not just for the environment and well-being in Maine, but also the economy. So as I mentioned, the advice is the first component there of the Woods Wise program. That includes visits from the Maine Forest Service district foresters. So everybody has a district forester. I'll go into that here briefly in just a moment. But we also have connections to private stewardship foresters. Maine Forest Service maintains an online list of stewardship foresters that have attended our trainings. Sean helped with a few of those last year where we did stewardship forester and tree farm inspector trainings. We also have forest health and monitoring information, urban and community forestry, forest and carbon, climate information. We now have a forest carbon and climate specialist, Andy Whitman, on staff that's able to answer questions about forest carbon and carbon programs. We also have a water resource specialist, Tom Gilbert, who can assist with culverts, culvert sizing if you have questions like that. And then second part there, resources. We have publications online, web pages. The Woods Wise Wire is great if you aren't already signed up for that. We put workshops like this in the Woods Wise Wire, Forestry for Maine Birds, as well as updates to quarantine maps. So if you're interested in how emerald ash borer is moving through the state, you can sign up for the Woods Wise Wire. And then the third component there of the Woods Wise program is the incentive portion. So we have a cost share to help assist with what's called Woodland Resource Action Plans, or RAPs. Go into that here shortly. But back to the advice. Maine Forest Service has 11 district foresters. So like I said, everybody has a district forester. This URL here, I can email to you if you're interested in visiting with the district forester. You can type in your town and it'll tell you exactly who your DF is. So if you are in Waldo or Knox, I'm your district forester. If you live in one of our neighboring counties, it's probably going to be Jared Gregory, who is also my husband, or Kenny or Julie Davenport. But you can see there on the map, the 11 districts. We are hiring a 12th district forester. So the portion that is green, so Jim and Kenny's district, the southernmost portions are going to be divided into that 12th position. So what do district foresters do for woodland owners? We can connect you to relevant resources. I usually, when I do what's called a walk and talk, so anybody who has 10 or more forested acres, I'll send a follow-up email with information related to what we discussed during the talk. So if you do have 10 or more forested acres, please reach out. We'd love to schedule a visit. We also review the Woodland Resource Action Plans, so that incentive that I'm going to talk about here in just a moment. We also assist with educational programs. I believe that picture there was a Forestry for Maine Birds program at the Caribou Bog Outdoor Center. Oh, okay. That is that picture, yeah. Forestry for Maine Birds workshops, can't say enough good things about those. Also help with webinars and fairs. And the district foresters are also regulatory, so we regulate NERPA, which is the Natural Resources Protection Act, and the Forest Practices Act. So NERPA is related to water quality. So we take a look at water quality issues during timber operations, and then the Forest Practices Act regulates clear cuts. A little bit more on resources here. So we have a woodland owner webpage on the Maine Forest Service website. You can basically get virtual copies of any of our publications, including the really popular forest trees in Maine.
If you click the slideshow tab, and it should play from current slide.
There we go. Thank you.
Sorry.
So any of those virtual publications does not like me. Let's try that. Also forest health information, so our forest health team updates.
Is that
I can just go from here, yeah. Forest protection materials, rules and regs. Although district foresters call it the red book, it's a rules and regulations book. So if you are interested in having any sort of timber operations take place on your property, you're able to get that rules and regulations book just right online. And then we also have connections to other organizations and stewardship foresters. I talked about that stewardship forester list that we maintain. We also have connections to like Maine woodland owners and the American Family Forest Tree Farm System. Okay, so the third part of that trifecta there is the incentives for woodland resource action plans, or RAPs. We offer this cost share to help people have a plan in place for their woodland. There's a lot of research that's went in to say that if you have your goals in writing, that you're more likely to accomplish them. So your RAP should be a detailed description of your property, maps, and then prescriptions and recommendations to help you reach your goal. So everyone's plan is going to be different, but they are required to have certain components to be eligible for this incentive. If you're interested in what goes into a woodland resource action plan and you would like more specifics, I do have the checklist that we send to consulting foresters who write those plans. So if you want to see what you're getting into before you sign up, I can absolutely send that to you. And then all of these RAPs are written by a licensed forester or a intern and approved by a licensed forester. I have this table here, just kind of summarizing those three features of the WoodsWise program. And if you see on the far right there, the incentive section. So if you have 10 to 50 wooded acres, we pay up to 50% of the plan or $250, whichever one of those we meet first. And if you have 51 or more wooded acres, we'll pay up to 50% or $5 a wooded acre. And then if you want to update an existing plan to say be part of the tree farm program, you have to have like forest of recognized importance, or if you need a carbon section in your plan, we can pay 50% or up to $150 for those. Okay, moving on to the next program. This is one that we are just starting to roll out again for this year. We've offered it a couple years now, but we just did the announcement. The invasive plant management program is designed to combat invasive plants and prevent their spread into wooded areas. Really excited about this one because you can do mechanical, chemical, or a combination of those methods. And it's designed for woodland owners that have 10 to 1,000 wooded acres. This program involves having a trained professional walk your property and then prepare an invasive plant control plan. The plans are super helpful. They map where the invasives occur on your property and then provide treatment recommendations for each of the plants that are present. Once those plans are approved, the landowner can apply to receive free invasive plant treatment performed by a licensed contractor. And once again, that doesn't have to be herbicide. You can choose to do mechanical means and hire a contractor to do that. I'm going to throw the incentive table up here for the plans. So the treatment is free, but the plans we pay up to about 50% of the cost. It's going to be dependent on the number of acres. You can see there the surveyed acres, estimated costs, and then the incentive there. If you're interested in having an invasive plant control practice plan, I need to have applications in by August 30th. So we're accepting them on a rolling basis. You can start turning them in at any point. But August 30th is the deadline there. Once you have your plan approved, you're eligible to apply for the next phase, so you can have that free treatment. And like I said, chemical, mechanical, or combination can be utilized through this grant. The other component of the invasive plant management program is the Invasive Plant Academy. We're going to be offering 2 sessions this year, one in Orono and one in Bridgeton, and this will be in September. If you're interested in attending those, let me know. I kind of have like a running list of people we're going to email about that. But it's an intensive training on invasive plant identification. We'll do a mapping component, how to collect the spatial data, and then kind of an overview of treatment practices based on Maine natural areas recommendations. There's going to be a hybrid portion where we do some classroom mapping and discussion around plants, but then there's going to be a field day where we actually practice identifying invasive plants. Applications are required for this academy, but you don't need to be a licensed applicator or forester to apply. So if you're really passionate about eradicating invasive plants, don't feel like you're limited, please submit an application. Okay, moving down the line here. This one is for municipalities, Project Canopy. I like to mention it because I think just about everybody is involved in some kind of way with their community here in Maine. A lot of us are in small town. I myself am on the cemetery committee for Thorndike, and we recently with the town put in for a Project Canopy grant. So I can speak to this a little bit from Maine Forest Service, but also from our town's perspective. We put in for a planting grant to have our town office really spruced up. We have some fir trees and some birch planted down by our Veterans Memorial and then on the opposing side. So this is meant for community forestry services and expertise. So technical assistance, educational programs, also financial assistance. It's really meant to maximize the benefits of our trees and forests in urban areas. So this is funded through the USDA Forest Service Urban and Community Forestry Program, also state grants and some private donations. It's really supporting efforts to maintain long-term community forestry programs. Project Canopy helps to stimulate and heighten public awareness around the importance of trees in urban areas, helps create and maintain partnerships, promote comprehensive natural resource management, increase the number of actively managing communities. With the increase of these catastrophic storms, you've seen probably quite a few trees come down. Project Canopy can also be used for maintenance. So those of you that have trees that are dropping some of the limbs and things, this might be a good one. Planting and maintenance is one of those categories that would definitely encourage you, if you're involved with your community, to take advantage of that. I wanted to put how much we currently have for this year. It is too late to apply this year, but it's never too early to start prepping for next year because it really just hits the ground running at the beginning of the year. There's a mandatory grant program workshop that you have to attend. It's virtual. After you attend that, you can put in for the application. We had to have grant applications in by yesterday, but like I said, never too early to apply. And we did have quite a bit of funding through our regular USDA funding and state grants, and then also the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act. Here's an example of the timeline for this year. It should probably be similar next year too. So we'll have the grant announcement towards the beginning of the year. It's usually that same month at the end that we do that grant workshop that's virtual, getting the applications in sometime May, June, and then we send out those award letters.
Is there staff available to put the grant together, like a sort of like a management baseline?
So our staff can't assist with grants, but a lot of times towns have in place someone that can write grants.
Well, I don't mean the grant itself, I mean the project, the parameters of the project. From a forester point of view, so. Point of view.
We can offer technical assistance for it. So yeah, if you have some ideas for planting and maintenance, say you want to do some planting, I won't say which town it is, but we have one town that's applied for this. They had a bunch of their trees come down in a historic cemetery. So they're using some of the want to use the Project Canopy funds to clean up the cemetery and plant. We can offer them recommendations on which trees to plant,
That's what
a list of, places to buy saplings.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of Project Canopy is that technical assistance, and we're always happy to help. So the last one I'm going to mention here is direct link loan. This is not a cost share program, but it's something I think is really important for our younger operators or, any of our operators getting started. we have these direct link loans that are a low interest loan for people who are interested in buying or upgrading current equipment. There is a requirement that you're a current master logger or certified logging professional or a qualified logging professional, QLP, to receive one of these. So if you are interested in becoming an operator, it would be great to reach out to those organizations first, go through the training. And then this is a way that you can start to acquire equipment or upgrade equipment that you already have. I don't have to tell anybody interest rates are crazy right now, so anything that can help. If you need more information on the direct link loan program, you can email me or Tom Gilbert. He assists with that. He also is assisting with the temporary bridge program. I didn't bring that up here. We've already accepted applications for that, but you may have heard things about it. He's also the one to go to if you have questions about culverts in your woodlands. Jan Santerre is our project canopy and invasive plant management program coordinator. And then Nicole Rogers is in charge of our Woods Wise program and also helping with that invasive plant management program. But like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I can put you in contact with your district forester or whichever program coordinator makes sense. Everybody has a district forester. I would strongly encourage you to reach out to them if you have a woodland that's 10 or more forested acres. And if you don't, but you have a group, like I meet with Rotarians, couple other road associations and things, we can definitely get groups together and walk the woods too. Does anybody have any questions before I pass it off to Sean? I know I went through that pretty quickly. But if you do have any questions, feel free to email or call.
Yeah, and if you want to, you can unmute now or type it in the chat. Yeah, we have plenty of time for questions, and if there's specific projects that you have in mind and you're not sure what that fits into, this is the perfect time to ask those questions.
And I love providing planting recommendations. So if you ever want to know what tree to plant, I mean, I'm not saying that I have the best recommendations, but I enjoy picking them out. So. All right.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was late. It's the beginning. For ash trees in general, are there any strategies in place for like a backup plan, sort of like on my land? Like I have a lot of ash trees and love them, and but I'm kind of worried. I sort of give space to some maples coming in or whatever, even though that's not what I want there. I'm kind of having mine like a backup. And I'm just wondering if that is something we should mention here.
Yeah, there are a lot of strategies that people are taking. What I recommend to landowners when I meet with them is if you are going to target ash trees for removal, leaving more of your female trees, so trees that are producing seed. I think it's kind of silly that we gender trees, but the trees that have seed in the summertime, leaving a few more of those. Just hoping for some more genetic diversity. Where I grew up in Illinois, we got hit really hard with emerald ash borer. There are still ash trees there though. I went back last April, there was plenty of ash trees still in the park and in some wild areas where they hadn't been treated. So that's a strategy as far as like keeping more genetic material out there. As far as like urban plantings with ash trees, I've seen where tulip poplar is shown to have a similar seed source to ash trees and could fill that niche of what wildlife is looking for seed wise. So that's a cool one that you could look at for urban and community. But I think as far as for forestry, I think it's really too soon to like try and go out and cut down all your ash trees preemptively. I think there's still a chance that we could have sort of genetic resiliency. But the best thing that you can do, don't bring firewood into your property from somewhere else. Make sure you're not moving anything from outside the quarantine area. That's the number one way to prevent the spread. Also, I don't know how much they've shown that this is true, but I've seen for myself where grouse will be on cars. So if you're parking right underneath your ash tree, maybe having another place to park. And just another note with urban and community trees, this kind of being a lesson to us about not planting the same tree down a row, like on a street, because they'll just go from one tree to another. So if you do have an ash tree on your property that you want to protect and kind of like isolate a little bit, that could be a strategy too. Unfortunately, it's something really difficult to
So
combat.
what's the northern extent in Maine, northern east, what is?
It's actually up in Aroostook County.
Is it-
Yeah, so like it's in the southern part of the state, the northern part of the state, and then Waterville.
So it jumped, someone transported it up there.
Yeah,
I
it
think
was
it
in
came
Aroostook
south,
first.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was in Aroostook first, and then they found it down near Portland, like down in York County. And then they found it in this pocket in Waterville. So with us being so close to Waterville, definitely be vigilant. If you're seeing ash trees struggling, please give me a call. I'd love to come out and take a look at them, make sure that it's not EAB. Because I mean, if we detection and preventing moving firewood, I think are our biggest two strategies there.
Yeah, and I'll add in too, so there's the University of Maine has a lab called it's the Ash Protection Collaboration across Wabanaki. And so those folks are researching silviculture methods and they're also collecting seeds and storing them in various vaults for future seed sources. And yeah, so they have a lot of resources on their website and I'll include that in the follow-up email. I have the link to that website. And sometimes they have webinars.
So how many people are online? I don't wanna.
We
Did you
have
disrupt-
6 altogether, I think. So yeah, we're fine. We got time.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
yeah.
If there was like 2 dozen people online.
No,
I know.
I think a lot of people are interested in that topic. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really good relevant one as we're coming into summer. I mean, Memorial Weekend is coming up. I can't tell you how many loads of ash I followed like down the interstate outside of quarantine areas. And I mean, I'm not a ranger, I can't. But it's scary.
DACF also does pretty regular updates on the ash core. They just did one recently, and that's a great way to see the updated maps of where it is, where they're suspecting it's going to be. And also what controls the state is putting into place, so you can see near you if there's a biological control that was released, or just to keep your finger on the pulse of like how it's moving. I think those are quarterly or more frequent than that.
Yeah, and if we have something where it's super relevant, like if it's spotted somewhere new, we'll put it in that Woods Wise wire.
Well, for me, I have like 55 acres of land and 40 acres of forest. And in my woodland, my forest, it's not with the ash that I care the most about.
Okay,
It's more near the upper elevation where my house is
okay,
and as I've cleared land over the last 20 years, I kept a lot of the ash because they're beautiful.
I know.
Beautiful trees.
they're gorgeous.
So it's kind of interesting. It's not so much a forestry issue
Oh,
for me as it is
I think it depends.
ornamental or functional
Yeah,
shade tree thing.
and
But
there are treatments, I won't talk about them at MOFGA. There are
I
treatments
understand.
besides- Yeah, and those can be,
some hard choices.
it is, it's
Yeah.
a really difficult choice.
Yes, I understand.
I have an ash tree that shades my entire house, and if I lose that, my cooling costs is gonna go up so
Well,
much.
same with me, same with me.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I actually cited the house, 20 years ago because of. Yeah, and
That's
it was a good choice. I mean, it's.
No, I'm a forest artist, I get emotional attachments to trees, I tell other people not to do it, and I'm like.
Better be,
Oh,
they're
favorite
speaking
tree.
to you, you want to get the inside information.
Oh.
No pun intended.
Yeah. And some foresters, I forget who said it. Be kind of this, you don't want it to be a self-fulfilling prophecy where if we get too nervous, end up taking all of the ash, it's like they're gonna be
Yeah.
gone one way or another if we do it or the board does it, so there is evidence. So saying that they can be resistant, and the new cohort, they don't go after the small sapling size, so.
Sure.
Keep our fingers crossed, guys.
I just want to check in with folks online. Are you able to see the PowerPoint presentation? Can one of you just unmute and let us know?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'm Sean Horn. I'm with UMaine Cooperative Extension in partnership with NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Service. I'm the climate smart agriculture and forestry professional. And like my title, this presentation is going to be a mouthful. So stop me if you have any questions. We're going to go through a lot of acronyms and look at some of the forestry specific financial assistance that NRCS can provide. So I always like to start off with kind of an intro into NRCS because I think that's a great way to kind of see how everything operates, kind of figure out where you would fit into that process. So NRCS at top down helps provide technical assistance and financial assistance. You'll often hear NRCS folks call that EA or FA. And so NRCS helps provide landowners address resource concerns to meet their land objectives. So there are 14 field offices based off of the different counties. So they don't line up with the main Forest Service districts exactly, but you can find out who your office is online, or it can send you a map. But it's pretty easy to find out where your office is. Here in Unity, the office would be in Belfast. So you can see the different offices there, and I have a map at the end. You can stop in any time or email or call your local field office. Someone will always be there if you have any questions or just want to stop and learn more about NRCS at your local level and meet your folks in the office. And NRCS is accepting applications anytime, as well as questions. There are yearly batching periods, so I'll go over what that means. So if you wanted to work with NRCS or get involved, getting in the door anytime is fine. August 23rd is the end goal for getting involved for fiscal year 2025. So it's kind of like a rolling period like that. So to just give you an idea, you can stop by anytime, but if you wanted to, hit the ground running as quick as you could with the federal government, by August 23rd is kind of the date for that. So yeah, the kind of the base value, the overall motto of NRCS is helping people help their land. So that kind of sums it up pretty well. And boiling it down to kind of a 5-step process, we're gonna look at a couple of these different stages. So it goes from planning, application, eligibility, ranking, and implementation. So there's a bit of a process there. So like I was just saying, the first step is planning. So that's going to be visiting your local office, figuring out what, based off of your objectives with your land, how NRCS can help and if it can help. And then with NRCS, going through the application process and figuring out what programs you could be a part of. And I'll go more in depth into the most popular and common programs that you'll see with NRCS in the state. And then eligibility. So it is important to note that with NRCS, it's a priority ranking system. So you put in an application and then your applications are ranked by your local area. And then that will determine if you will get funding for the fiscal year. So it's not a guarantee when you go in or seek assistance that you'll get it. And then, like you see there in ranking, NRCS goes through the applications and allocates the resources. And then we get to the point where we can put in and start doing good conservation work. So that's just a very high level overview of kind of the NRCS process. So it's always good to stop and just ask questions because the process can take a while.
Does NRCS do the soils maps? Is that you? Or is
The
that
web
USDA?
soil survey, that's under USDA, is that what you're talking about? Yeah. So yeah, that's under the overarching umbrella. NRCS is part of the USDA. So yeah, and we use the web soil survey information all the time.
But you don't administer it or updates and things like that?
No. Actually, I'm not sure. I'm not the soil scientist for the state, so I shouldn't speak to that, but I can let you know for sure if that's the case. So looking now, going back to this previous slide really quickly under eligibility, looking under number 3, the different financial assistance programs. So the main programs, like I was mentioning, they are EQIP and CSP. So there are a lot of acronyms here, but I think just knowing a few will help with not understanding a lot. So EQIP is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and CSP is the Conservation Stewardship Program. So those are just a few bullet points on there that I think help differentiate the two programs. Big ones being EQIP is a good starting program when people first get in the door and introduced to NRCS. It helps people address resource concerns on their land. And you get paid when you complete a practice, and the contracts can range from 1 to 10 years. Most planners I see like to do it in like 1 to 2 to 3 year range, because you can really tailor when working with your planner how much you want to bite off in terms of your resource concerns. If there's something you really want to tackle, then you can do bits at a time and do them 1 year after another. You can get contracts one after another or at the same time, but it just helps you not have to do everything all at once if you plan on, doing the work yourself, or you imagine you're gonna have a hard time finding work. So it's a good program that NRCS uses to get people in the door. And CSP is for the entire property, and the way that I like terming it and have heard it is that it's for when you want to do additional conservation work on top of the good conservation work you're already doing. So if you already have a forest management plan in this case, or you're already actively managing your land, but you want to go above and beyond and tack on some of the different enhancements or learn about ways you can go above and beyond, CSP is a good way to do that, where you get an annual payment for the base good conservation work you're doing, and then you get paid for each one of the enhancements. But those are a 5-year contract period, where with equip, it can be 1 to 10 years. So that is a longer time period. And when we look at some of the practices, in those programs, you'll see that they also have expense attached to them. So I'll go over that a little bit more. But to be eligible for working with NRCS, I put up the requirements there. So you have to be a private ag land, tribal land, or non-industrial private forest land, cannot be state, town, municipal land. And you need to have identified resource concerns that can be addressed with an NRCS practice. So that's what I was mentioning, that why equip is great, because you're addressing a specific resource concern. And you have to go through and work with FSA to have a farm and track number first before you can start working with NRCS. You need to develop a conservation plan, aka a forest management plan. And there are payment limitations. So 450,000 through equip, 200,000 through CSP. And you need to have an adjusted gross under 900,000. There's asterisks near those values just because they're based off of the farm bill, which is continuing right now, but those are from 2023 values. So those values are likely to change, and haven't really heard about this in the forestry realm where people are hitting those limitation criteria, but some of the bigger ag producers that are to that. Yes.
Can you just name like the primary resource concerns that your agency is prioritizing?
In the forestry sense,
Yeah,
big one we're seeing is just well, forest roads and trails and landings, so access into the forest for management is a big one. Also erosion associated with that. Another big one is just health and vigor. So people, forest is overstocked, understocked, or just general forestry concerns. So practice 666, the forest stand improvement is the.
I mean, water quality is always a big one.
Mhm.
That's,
Yeah, but I'm definitely seeing landowners coming in that are either, coming into inheriting land or just purchase land and want to see what they can do with it. It was either previously possibly like high graded or just don't know what to do. So just doing general management or learning about it, because while the focus of this talk is financial incentive or financial assistance, technical assistance, NRCS also does that, like the Maine Forest Service. So the field office can come out and kind of tell you the resource
well, I
concerns.
guess my question is like,
Sure.
do you also have like wildlife? But I'm just
Mhm.
like, is that not a priority as opposed to, habitat, say, for example?
It
I mean-
is, and I think.
I mean, it's about commercial production of the land.
It also is, wildlife is also a big component too, and it kind of depends on, like, county to county, they can prioritize where some of those funds go through the local working groups, so. Some of the counties are prioritizing like invasive management.
Yeah.
Some are also prioritizing pollinators, like they can set fund asides for specific. Interests for that locality, so it can differ, but yeah, the number of practices are increasing, and with the climate smart money and through IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which I'll talk a little bit more about further down the line, there is more opportunity to address the concerns too. So I think that's one of the biggest things, is that there's more opportunity and a lot more funding to address the concerns that the federal government and the people have identified as being a problem.
Right, so it's really a combination of what the government, you as an agency prioritizes vary into different offices in different counties and so on. In combination with the preferences and priorities of the landowner as well.
Exactly, yeah,
It's
and
bringing those two priorities together.
definitely, and kind of the overarching thing, which I'll hit on a few times, is it 100% should be a conversation when the landowner goes in to NRCS or with the Forest Service and or working with a private forester. I think a landowner figuring out like their objectives and what they want to focus on is paramount, because then you can work with the professional regardless of who the agency is, and meet those objectives. And there's a lot of different avenues to do that, but it really should be a conversation to make sure that your objectives are met. And there are a lot of opportunities and in the NRCS sense practices in order to do that. There really is so many tools in the toolbox now at this point, both financially and in terms of technical opportunity and expertise, that yeah, it's a good time to get involved with any of the groups. So hopefully that helps answer a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's good.
Other eligibility requirements, and I'm a very visual learner, so I kind of like tables like this that show those two programs I was talking about previously. You can see the differences there. I won't go through and read that. And I think these presentations are gonna get sent after the recording is cool. Yeah, so those kind of just go through the eligibility requirements for participating with NRCS. And then kind of going back to what I was saying about the Inflation Reduction Act, it is a great time to get involved and stop into your local NRCS office, because there is a lot of funding coming in through the Inflation Reduction Act. It's providing billions in support nationally for the conservation programs, EQIP and CSP just being two of them. So the funding is coming through the climate smart agriculture and forestry mitigation practices. So the core practices you're planning have to be considered climate smart, and what that means, I'll go through what climate smart means on a slide further down. But I like to think of it as just being like environmentally conscious is what you're doing. And to give you kind of like an idea, so it started in 2023, and the funding in Maine, the funding's been ramping up since 2023, so it's factor of 10 more from last year, the funding this year. And the local funding amount that Maine gets out of the normal farm bill, it's about as much, if not more, every year it has been last year. And all of the money that came in through Maine for 2024 has been obligated. So, and there was more need than there was money, and there was a considerable amount of money. So basically it goes to show that, speaking to your question, that even with the increased funding, there's a lot of opportunity. People are taking advantage of it. But I also like to think of it as there's the opportunity to get funding through the local funding pool through NRCS as well as Climate Smart. So think of it like almost two tickets to ride, or two lottery tickets, because there's two different funding sources. So if your practices are considered climate smart, then you can get funded through the local funding pool or Climate Smart. So, and a lot of forestry practices are considered climate smart. We'll take a look at those. So climate smart, the whole NRCS definition is up there, but it's basically NRCS has identified practices that are climate smart if they reduce or remove greenhouse gas emissions or help store, sequester carbon. So you can see a lot of the terms that get talked about in climate change and climate smart as well, mitigation, adaptation, resilience up there. So yeah, the focus is on mitigation, so the carbon storage and sequestration and reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So you can see there a couple practices that are included: forest land improvement, wildlife habitat planting, and that's a very difficult photo, but I think one further down, we'll look at it a little closer. But so the climate smart practices are broken into a bunch of different categories. We're just focusing on highlighted one here: agroforestry, forestry, and wildlife habitat. But if you do have ag land as well, there are a lot of different climate smart practices. I think, what is it? There's like 150 or so practices that are considered climate smart. And that's just for I think it's EQIP and CSP combined. So looking a little bit closer, you can see in the agroforestry, I included some of the soil health and grazing ones, because I think some of the other ag ones in there are important as well. People that have ag land maybe have the back 40 or likewise or have both. So some of the forestry ones there, the ones we're looking at are forest land improvement and wildlife habitat, I believe. But I'm throwing a lot of information at you, but if you do have any questions about what these terms mean, how they apply to the programs and how you can get involved in them, you can either reach out to Maddie or myself, or like I was saying, stop to your local office, and they're happy to help. So a little bit closer here looking, and you can see this is from that climate smart list. You can see forest stand improvement, and I kind of zoomed in there some of the enhancements. So forest stand improvement has the memorable and somewhat unfortunate number of 666. And the enhancements all have attached like E666A, E66E. So you can see some of the different examples of the different enhancements through CSP, which is kind of the going above and beyond management. And forest stand improvement has a bunch of scenarios, which I'll touch upon as well. So again, sorry, there's a lot of information here. There's a lot to parse through, but the financially in equip, NRCS tries to match 75% of the practice. So you can find online the payment rates for all of the different practices. So 75% of the cost NRCS tries to cover to implement it. If you are historically underserved individual or a new farmer or landowner in less than 10 years, you can qualify for 90% cost share cover. So you can cover a considerable of the cost to implement. There's also funding for the planning activities like the forest management plans. So you can get funding for the planning activities as well. So I just wanted to highlight some of the forestry practices. Those 3 number codes are just the NRCS codes provided them. So if you hear anyone talking about them, those are the numbers associated with them. So yeah, those are just some of the equip forestry practices in there. And then looking more closely at forest stand improvement. So the purpose, you can see a lot of the different reasons you may want to get involved with NRCS, because if you have any of these objectives, then this is just one of the practices that you can kind of get involved with. So there's a lot of words in here. Sorry, it's a very wordy slide or very wordy presentation, but it's hard to, I want to try and cram in as much information as possible. And then, so looking at, so that's the purpose of the practice, and then looking at the practice categories and how that would break down. You can do pre-commercial thinning, competition control, patch cuts, crop mastery release, basal stem treatments, chemical treatments for, and like I was saying before, so the lifespan of this is 10 years, and this is where the conversation with your planner comes into play, because it's important to know that when you get involved with NRCS, and if you do get funded, that if you do want to do the pre-commercial thinning, or if you want to do these activities, that you have to maintain them and do the operations for 10 years. It's just important to know that it's not kind of a one and done, like it's a contract and a partnership. So that's why it's really important to not only share your objectives, but share kind of what you're, if you think you're doing the work yourselves, with which a lot of people like to do in the forestry sense, if they can, depending on how much land they have, then it's good to know that you're kind of on the hook for a second. So that can.
So is funding released prior to work being done or reimbursed?
Upon completion.
Yeah.
So yeah, so NRCS will come out and check out that it's been implemented, or the forester, if the forester is the TSP, they can sometimes do the checkout as well. But it's upon completion. That's with equip. With CSP, you'll get a minimum annual payment for the work, and then you'll get payment upon completion of the enhancements as well.
How does that work if the property changes hands within the time frame? Does that transfer over to the new landowner, or would it like have to go through the application process again?
That's a good question. I believe
You had a slide that said contracts can be transferred.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, and it's the same with leased land too. Like if you have an agreement, like if you're leasing land, like which is more in an access, then if it's leased land, you can. And yeah, I believe it is. You can transfer the contracts.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then so this was kind of looking at the forestry practices. I just went back a few slides, going back to where I was, some of the more forestry and wildlife focused practices to your question too. So there are, like I was mentioning, there's a lot of tools in the NRCS toolbox, and I really wanted to just highlight some of the practices if this piqued anyone's interest in getting involved. So These are some of the different practices. They go into much greater detail if you're interested in learning more about them. There's whole kind of purposes and specs for all of these if you really want to get in there. But the planner should be able to, base off of your objectives, be like, oh, this is the one that we should try and do, should try and go with. So there's a lot of opportunities depending on what your objectives are. It isn't just commercial or economic. If you don't want it to be, it can be aesthetic, cultural, personal. Your objectives are your own. It's up to the planner and the professional, the forester, to help you achieve those. So yeah, looking at one of those in particular, which is the structures for wildlife, you can see the different opportunities. So it really does range from like our full harvesting activities to smaller activities like this. So there's a lot of different options there. And again, the cost share is the same, 75% for the practices, or 90% if you fit under those other categories. And the lifespan on this one is 5 years. So it's just important to know there's a lot of moving parts here and a lot of different practices and programs and lifespans and contract lengths. So I tried to fit as much in here, but with a limited amount of time. So again, going back to it really is a conversation with the planner. And in the forestry sense, and involvements with the foresters. So similar to the Maine Forest Service, NRCS has a list of approved foresters to write their plans. They're called technical service providers, or TSPs. So yeah, like I said up there, there's a list of TSPs. I highly recommend looking at the TSP list as well as the Maine Forest Service list, because there's a lot of good information in both. You can see like on the stewardship foresters list, there's like the forestry for Maine birds, if the forester's done that, so you can kind of cross-reference and see and shop around. Should always ask your neighbors about foresters they work with, but there is a list of approved foresters. And NRCS is always looking for more foresters to be TSPs. So if you know anyone who's a forester that would like to become a TSP, have them reach out to Jerry Barnes, who's one of the state foresters. And then kind of really quickly what the work entails, there's more acronyms, CPA 106, DIA 165, you'll hear that a lot. Those are just the conservation plan. So the conservation plan, you can see some of the big items there, getting down your objectives, current conditions, basically the forest management plan. The design and implementation is the recommendations and what the recommendations will look like under NRCS practices. And SEMA, I thought this was important to include in there, because SEMA 223 is a way to get plans if you have a RAP plan or a different forest management plan from a private forester that isn't a TSP. There is a funding opportunity and just an opportunity to get that plan to NRCS standards that is in place. So don't think that if you go one way or the other, that's kind of the end all be all. There are ways to kind of move about, because everybody's trying to help do good conservation work and manage your land the way you want it to be managed. So this is kind of the map, and give you an idea if you do want to go into the local office. Usually in the office is district forester, the soil conservationist, and partners like myself, and other people in the NRCS world. We already talked about the TSPs, the technical service providers, Farm Service Agency, Rural Development, and the Soil Water Conservation Districts. Usually all kind of been, or they can be in one location or nearby. So some of the other faces you'll see if you do go into the local office. And one other program, oh, it looks like the top may have got cut off there that I want to talk about that's new, is the Emergency Forest Restoration Program, EFRP. So that's a program through Farm Service Agency, and it was put in place, or is currently in place after the storms in December. So it is a way for folks to get back on their feet if they have a lot of forest damage. So again, it's a cost share up to 75% of the cost to implement restoration practices. So it's for eligible landowners of that non-industrial private forest land to carry out emergency measures to restore the land damages. So if you had a ton of blowdowns, or if you are a maple producer and all of your taps and lines got taken out, it's too late for that because the season's over. But it's basically to help folks get back on their feet after that if it's impeding their operation. So you can see some of the other information up there. The application period, I believe, is ending May 24th. So stop by your local Farm Service Agency if you want to learn more to get an application. It's pretty quick and easy as far as I understand it. But yeah, it's just another short-term program in place through FSA that NRCS is assisting with to help with some of the storm damage, because we understand that was pretty hard on folks. So yeah, we're working through that now.
When would the funding go out for that?
So I'm not sure when the funding goes out. I know that once the application is, it can take a little while just from a staffing level to get out there and take a look at the damage. But then if the application is valid and the damage is approved, or the practices to address the damage has been approved, then there's, I believe, 2 years to implement the practice. So it's not like it has to be done. And in specific cases, like with maple producers, if they, they had to get back to work, if they took photos, there can be unique cases. Working with Farm Service Agency, as I've been told, like if you needed it or needed to get down that access road to continue working, had to clear it to work through that and see if that's through this program they can help out with retroactively. So not standard, but it's cases I've heard that it works where it's
The tax are taken out. a little bit.
exactly, yeah, because producers weren't. So yeah, it's taken a while to get underway. Yeah, so I think that kind of covers it. Anyone has any questions? I don't know. After the meeting?
All right, well, thank you all. Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you, Sean, for presenting, sharing all this great information with us. And thank you all for attending online and hanging out. And thank you, Alan. All right, Alan. Yep, thanks for attending in person. Please eat snacks.
I do too, but I end up seeing.
Good
Good.
stuff.
All right, well, thank you all, and I hope you have a very good night. I'll send a follow-up email with presentations, contact information, that app call lab that I mentioned. And yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any further questions, or if there's anything that you think should be thought about. That'd be great. All right, thank you all, and have a good night.
Thank you.